Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Humanity Masters Unplugged. I have Dr. Maria Blekher here. Hi, Maria. How are you?
Hi, great being here. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Yeah, thank you too. Happy New Year. Lovely to see you again. So let's dive into your story. Your journey brings together science, venture capital, impact all together. I would like to know a little bit about your background, what early experiences shaped your sensitivity to complex systems and learned long-term thinking, and how did you combine science and venture capital mindset?
It depends where we want to start the journey, but I would say that if we look at complex systems, my background is in academia. So I have a PhD
Yeah.
in behavioral science and consumer behavior. So I would say, an academic mindset is almost as complex as it gets when it comes to thinking about complex systems or asking complex questions and looking for solutions or outcomes or for more questions. So that would be the academic part of it. If I'm looking at it more broadly, I was born in the former USSR, in former Russia. I grew up in Israel. I moved to the US almost 13 years ago. So I'm coming from various backgrounds, and it almost inherently creates this view and ability to experience complex systems and navigate them.
Yes. Yeah, and you have been, I mean, with behavioral health sciences, then you ended up being a VC. When did you realize that only understanding problems wasn't enough, that capital itself is leverage for change? Like when did that mindset happen?
Uh, I think you nailed a very important point that differentiates the academic world, as you know, from the real world or from the business world. For the sake of this conversation, we can do a lot without money. We can have great ideas, amazing strategies, lots of people are willing to volunteer, but eventually if you want to build something, some people actually wants to get paid. Some things cost money. And so if you want to build a company, you can be very lean, but if money is the currency in the world we operate in, it is required to operate
Yeah,
and to build companies. And
yeah,
so more making it more practically for me, I probably realized that, let's say 6, 7 years ago, after working with many early stage startups, some of them obviously, were supposed to shut down, but others were very promising and they were struggling to fundraise. And so seeing companies with a lot of potential going out of business because they didn't have the cash flow, that was the point where I realized like you can have a great idea, you can have even a great execution, but if timing is not aligned or other things are happening, if you don't have the runway, you're kind of limiting your options. And so money in this case is really an enabler.
yeah, agreed. And what personal values guided you even long before Serendipity VC existed?
So I would say probably curiosity and problem solving. Like I believe if we call something a problem, there is a solution. If there is no solution, it's not a problem. So that would be the first one. And I think when we look especially at startups, we're all here to solve problems. And as an investor, I'm investing in startups that are solving problems. So that would be almost the underlying view or value on everything. That's where it starts. And then curiosity, because if you have a problem, you need to figure out how to solve it. And so you should be really able to look at it from different perspectives, combine, deconstruct, reverse engineer, take ideas from different fields. And I think that was something always that was part of who I am. That's how I grew up. That's, how I went through school and ended up where I am now.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised because you're an impact investor. I got to, interview, and also I got to meet scientists, along my journey. And usually scientists and who are truly interested in helping humanity are impact investors. I would also call myself an impact investor. An impact investor investing open means acting before proof is complete. How do you make decisions when outcomes may only be visible years later?
Yeah, I think investing in general, unless we invest in businesses that exist, and even there is a risk factor, especially investing in early stage startups. There is a major factor of uncertainty. when it comes to impact, it's really what does it do to the world. In our case, it's mental and neuro health. So that's the mission. I think to really make an impact, and when it combines with this investment, it's not only about making an impact. I'm also supposed to be making money along the way. I really focus on I'm starting with the market. I think that very often the problem or the market are overlooked, where they should be the starting point. So I'm a behavioral scientist. My PhD is in consumer behavior. So I spent several years really digging into how we as humans making financial decisions, and then digging into how consumers are making decisions. And so I think when you really understand the market and when you really understand the problem, that would be, it's not 100% because there's no 100%, but this is a very, very strong indication that you're onto something. So really understanding the problem, understanding the landscape, and understanding the current solutions. Because the truth is, as you know, there are so many problems, and logically we would want all of them to be solved. That's not the reality. Like, the enemy of every startup is not the competition, it's the default, right? Because people and organizations are used to live with some uncomfortable situations or problems and challenges. So unless it's really painful, very often, no one is really willing to pay for a solution. So the problem, to make sure it's really painful and that the solution is actually solving the problem, and of course the willingness to pay on the other side, I think those are strong indicators way before anything, way before you actually see things materialize.
Yeah, you're looking for that. And what gap in the venture ecosystem were you responding to when you first founded Serendipity VC?
So remember back in the COVID days when people started talking about mental health, and suddenly you had all these conversations about people being sad and anxious, and it almost became a sexy topic. And so you had startups who raised funding to develop solutions, and it became almost normalized. And I'm saying almost because COVID ended and everyone went back to smiling again. And no one is depressed, no one is anxious, we don't have all these things. That's not the reality, right? It didn't go anywhere, but the hype kind of went away. And so by that time, I realized that there is a major, major need in the market for solutions in mental health and brain health. And, we're looking from assessment for autism to solutions for PTSD and drug-resistant epilepsy. So major market. And the traditional VCs are staying away from these spaces because they behave differently than your traditional SaaS B2B or even a consumer product. And so that's the gap we're feeling with Serendipity.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, that's great. And how do you work? How do you hope your work reshapes the relationship between capital, innovation, and human well-being, especially mental health?
So capital is the tool. It's the fuel for innovation in our case. So once we invest capital, we invest in technology. If that technology actually delivers and heals, that's where the impact created and the financial upside is created. So I don't know if it's a change, but I really want to double down on the idea that when we can do really well and we can do a lot of good, and that these things are not, that they can work together. They're not counter-exclusive. We can really invest in great companies, improve people's lives, and make money along the way.
Yes, I agree. And that's why I also, as an investor, tend to invest in impact VCs and impact startups because, if I'm going to invest, especially as an angel investor or an LP, my money, I would better invest it in impact, which will, help humans get to the next level, like the name of this podcast. And what kind of founders do you feel most compelled to support beyond metrics and markets? Is there kind of like a pattern you have been seeing in your decision process?
Yeah, I think both you and I know that eventually we invest in people. And so it's a cliche, but it's true. Therefore, it's a cliche. So I think we're looking mostly for people who are, first of all, you want to work with kind people, right? You invest in someone, you really want to invest in good people, but that's kind of a very general thing to say. So I'm really looking for people who are mentally flexible, who can deal with uncertainty because startup is a roller coaster, who can take feedback, who know how to pivot, who have a kind of very strong core, but at the same time are very open and flexible. Again, being an entrepreneur is like you have your internal turbulence with the startup, you have constantly changes in the market, so you should be able to navigate a lot of uncertainties. So I think that one of the most important qualities for an entrepreneur is this ability to navigate uncertainty and being mentally flexible, and this is something that I'm really looking for in the people I invest in the startups.
Yeah, and I think I agree also, if they are good people, they listen and then we find a way because it's a long partnership for you, especially as a VC. And throughout your business journey as a VC, also, your journey as a scientist, behavioral scientist, what beliefs about success, progress, or leadership have you personally outgrown?
I think when I started, I really believed that I must know everything and I should have all the answers to every possible question. You grew up as an overachiever, you know everything, you get all the A's, you're growing with a sense of, oh, I should know that. And I think it takes growth, experience, and kind of maturity to realize that the more you know, the more you realize you really don't know. And that you don't need to have all the answers. In fact, if I have all the answers, I'm probably asking the wrong questions. And I think that's great because then you open up to an incredible community of very smart people who surround you. And you also allow a lot of question marks, which is super important, especially in our environment. So I would say that that was something that occasionally I still want to have the answers, but that was a big one.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think about the word power, especially the quiet power of deciding what gets funded and what doesn't? Because I feel like, founders are doing a great job and it's the success of the founder and the company. But we angel investors, LPs and VCs, we're kind of like the quiet power behind it all. What do you think about that power? I think that's real power, but I would like to get
Yeah,
your ideas.
I think the word power has a relatively negative connotation, right? Because people use power to control, or we always speak about power as something you're using for in a relational way to another party. And I think that power is much more internal. And so when it's used in an internal way and not against another party, it's a different experience. We're in VC, right? So like you have so many power games. You know that as an investor. It doesn't have to be that way. I think the power, especially the quiet power, is the ability to know who you are, who you stand for, what's your investment thesis, to be very practical and just follow through. Like you don't need to enforce anything. You don't need to reinforce. So you don't need to apply that power. And almost when power is accurate, it doesn't require you to apply more energy. Like you don't need to force anything. Once
Yeah, it's
you have your core, you're quiet. Like it's a yes or a no, and it's your internal power. Like you don't need to demonstrate it; it shows up. I think like again, the word power is a complex one because like the image most people see in their mind when we say power is something that is almost equals to force. And I think that power, at least for me, has much more to do with like an internal strength and core, and then it's much more internal and not external, and it doesn't come across as force, but as it is what it is, and these are the values, or this is the decision.
So, as a woman leading in venture capital, what qualities do you believe are still undervalued in the investment culture?
Well, I would love to ask you the same question. I think that's a
Yes.
great discussion to have.
I mean, women we know are still, not getting the investment, not getting the support, undervalued, and usually like immigrants, especially I think in Europe and UK, they are undervalued. Although in US it's not the case. I think in UK and Europe that's kind of like a bit the case. What has your experience been? And
So
also like here in UK, people don't take mental health startups very seriously. They think mental health anything to do with mental health and impact should be nonprofits. So that's my experience because I'm in London and UK.
Well, I would agree with you definitely on the first one because I think what is undervalued is a diverse background and experience, whether it's, females, which is, 51% of the population, it's not even a minority. Minorities, of course, people who are immigrants, come from different backgrounds, who didn't go through the traditional, VC investment banking career, but are coming from different experiences and very often are bringing different perspective and end up being more successful investors just because of this background. That's probably not still undervalued, but it's also an opportunity for these populations, to go out and do their thing, and the proof is in the pudding. And the other side is, if we're looking at industry, so you mentioned that mental is very often pushed into the philanthropic space. We see that in the US as well. I would say that we as investors in both mental and brain health, ranges from autism through dementia and Alzheimer with everything in between, right? That's a huge, huge, huge space, like tens of trillions of dollars. It has something to do with almost every human and is still occasionally considered to be a niche, which is very interesting because, that's a very, very, very large, significant niche. But when we speak about health, like people usually see the body, and for reasons that we can dig into or not, mental health and even brain health were kind of pushed aside. But I think this is something that is we see changing these days, and technology is a major, major player. Again, as investors in tech and not in pharma, I think technology is putting the brain back on the map, and you see like the Neuralinks of the world stepping up. So this is something that I expect to change. And again, we're starting to see that.
Lovely. And when we come to more personal questions, what does being unplugged mean to you, away from everything?
I want to say that's work in progress, but really it's being in nature. So hiking, running, walking, practicing yoga. So it's movement and nature, really, like to stay away from electronics, from myself, from the computer, which is very difficult. But full unplugging, it's no electronics, movement and nature. That's
And I was in a meeting today in the morning in London with 20 amazing women, investors, founders, and we had an organization where we met, and I was the speaker, and we talked about how women get very much affected because of our emotional, spiritual side on the scale of, global challenges that's happening right now, because globally there's a lot of things happening. And I think that's why most women are more interested in impacts, in things that are valuable, truly meaningful, and that are, helping humans get to the next, besides, men are interested in other things. So when you are overwhelmed, because this was kind of like one topic we spoke about today with the woman in the group. So what do you do when global challenges feels overwhelming? What inner truth brings you back to your center and back to, your sanity?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I actually spoke to a group of professional women yesterday night in Manhattan, and this is also something that came up. So I would say the first thing for me, and really it's funny, I discovered it a few years ago, which is very surprising, but it's breath work. Like really breathing. Again, it's a cliche. We all do it automatically, but it works because it kind of goes around your brain. So with all the racing thoughts we have, like if you breathe slowly, like 4 inhales, 4 on the exhale, you would all know though the drill. It just calms down the nervous system. That's the first thing for me when I feel overwhelmed with the news, and again the world we live in is quite overwhelming. First, it's a breath, and then for me, it's really reminding myself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like I'm on a mission that is much bigger than myself. So that's why I'm here for, not to send another email. Like it's not that. So, a few breaths, a walk outside, if this situation is really complex, and then like asking yourself, why are you doing why am I doing this? And I'm like, oh, I know what I'm doing this. And I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make this work.
Yeah, getting back to yourself, getting back to your mission. And I spent years on studying breathing sciences and dysfunctional breathing habits and founded many projects around breathing. So breathwork is one of the most powerful tools. Yeah.
And it's free, right? You don't need devices, you don't need anything. And we're doing it like, we wouldn't be having this conversation if both of us were not breathing at the moment. So
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Maria. This has been a very valuable conversation. I have learned a lot and I have enjoyed every moment. And I have one final question before we say goodbye. And of course, add anything if you want to add. If you could leave one message for the next generation of impact investors and founders shaping the future, what would that be?
keep going, keep doing what you're doing. Like, ignore the noise outside, connect to your core, and act out of love. If you are aligned, if you're doing what you're doing out of love, not out of fear, just keep going.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
very nice seeing you again.
Thank you for the thoughtful questions. Those are great.
And thanks to everyone who's watching us on YouTube and also listening to us on Spotify. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Bye for now, everyone.